Welcome to Customer Success and Product Team Alignment. I'm Mark Ray, founder of Day One Success. So let's set the stage here. What we mean by alignment is that your teams have built trust with each other, right? Your customer success teams, your sales teams, or really any go-to-market team trust that they're being heard and that their feedback that is representative of customers is being taken into account when product is making decisions about what to build or what to tweak or how to influence the product roadmap. And your product teams trust that the feedback is being vetted properly, right? That the feedback is coming in with, kind of qualifying data to showcase the impact it could have on your customers. So let's dive in. Authentic collaboration will always yield better product value for your customers, right? And authentic collaboration doesn't mean just better one-to-one conversations. Collaboration does sometimes require, some guidelines, right? Success, professional services, and other teams are on the front line. They're getting a wealth of feedback. Many times they're getting a lot of feedback, right? And they're trying to figure out a way to qualify that feedback and then quantify that feedback so product teams can understand that impact, right? And it's important for us as leaders to build the right cadence and language so that these teams can collaborate authentically, but also have some guidelines, right? As leaders, our job is to kind of put the bumpers in the bowling lane, right? I take my kids bowling, and let's be real, the bumpers are for me, right? They are not for my children. They are much better bowlers than I am. But the bumpers are there so that the ball gets to the end of the lane, right? It's just enough guidelines so that we know we can get to our objective, but how we get there, how that ball is thrown, whether you want to go the traditional way or underhand or whatever you want to do to get the bowling ball down that lane and hit whatever pins you want to aim for, that's up to the team, right? And the same goes for collaboration. We want to put just enough framework in that we don't stifle collaboration and people feel it's too robotic, but we want enough there so that people feel like there's a shared language they can speak, right? And that's partly too, product teams need feedback for efficiency and accuracy, right? They need that direct feedback because it helps validate potential product decisions that they're going to make, or maybe recently rolled out new features for a product that they want to know, does it have the right impact? Does it need tweaks? And they want to trust that they can get that feedback. Sure, they could go direct to the customer, but they also sometimes that direct route is through the teams that have the trust and rapport with the customer who are able to solicit back that true and authentic feedback. So it's important, again, that we build the right framework, we build the right language and cadence to get that authentic collaboration, but not stifle it. So let's talk about some ways that we do that. Right? Collaboration cadence is critically important. Cadence helps set the pace for your teams. It helps set the pace for your customers. So, for example, you have customers that provide feature feedback, right? And they kind of want to know, like, hey, is this happening or not? It may not be the end of the world if you don't do it. The worst thing you could do is kind of leave your customers in limbo where it's like for years on end, these feature requests just sit in a bucket, right? By having a cadence at which your team can say, hey, we have a product council or product review board or, a Shark Tank style meeting where we present our feedback on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, that customer knows when that loop might be closed in terms of that feedback. And that feedback might go into a few buckets. It might go into, yes, we're actually going to take this into consideration. This is great feedback. We might influence the current quarter, next quarter, or, early next year roadmap. Or no, sorry, this is a bit edge case for our product as a whole. We may not do that, right? Or it could go, there is the third bucket of, hey, we were going to look at this at the beginning of next year. But eventually it has to get to a yes or no, and it has to be definitive. Now, to get there, you need a shared evaluation criteria, right? You need to be able to rate the impact that feature request could have on not only that customer, but your complete customer base, right? You need to have, revenue impact. You need to have volume of customers. How could this impact their workflow, right? You could have two features that impact 100 customers each, but one might have a greater breadth of impact than the other, right? Now, to review that rating and criteria, which we'll talk a little bit more about, you have to have a clear kind of pipeline for that, right? You have to have a way to aggregate it in a standardized manner. So think like sales pipeline or customer success qualified pipeline, where you have clear criteria when you submit an opportunity. Same thing, when you submit feedback, it has to have this data. It will then be reviewed by the team asynchronously by this point, and then presented during a deal review board or product review board meeting. And from that product review board meeting, we have a clear SLA on when that will get to a yes, no, or we will look at it in this particular quarter bucket, right? Now, all of this is not to diminish the benefit of one-to-one communication. It actually allows for a much better collaborative, more fruitful, maybe more detailed one-to-one collaboration between product and other teams, because the weight has been lifted around, well, will this actually get to the top of the pile? Will it not? Right? And it's okay if things don't, but you got to an answer, right? So again, this is about building a cadence and a shared language so that those one-to-one conversations can be maybe more exhaustive on the implementation of the feature. Now, as part of this, again, feedback is not, right? Fire hose is not a great feedback strategy. More is not always better, right? Now, more is better in terms of qualifying data. More is not better in terms of just the individual bits that make up the data points, right? And this is because the fire hose is one of these things that can organically grow, right? Your company could be a startup and it's just boomed. It's gone from 50 to 300 people, or you're maybe not a startup and you're going from 500 to 1,500 people, or maybe you're going from 1,000 to 5,000 people, right? Scaling companies will always have pools of communication, and those pools will grow and those pools will get bigger. And frankly, the glue between teams has to continuously be reevaluated, right? Feedback coming fire hose style can be absolutely exhausting. And that's for both teams. One, for the team receiving it, because if there's no qualifying data, it's really hard because you have to then go through and sort of bucket where everything fits. And, oh, is this related to this feature over here or this feature over here, right? And the value can't be qualified without data, right? You cannot codify the value of something if you don't have data wrapped around it. So feedback in fire hose form is just not a strategy, and it is something you should look to eliminate. And one way to eliminate that is influence through data, right? Is take support, for instance. You could have 100 tickets a month. You could have 20,000 tickets a month. Either way, they should come in categorized, right? High level bucket to inform sort of heat map areas where to explore within your product, and then a sub kind of, whether it's a tag and a sub tag of the specific area within the main sort of like heat mapped area. And the reason being is you could have an e-commerce product, right? You could have heat map area of shipping. Well, shipping's still a big thing, and maybe it's tracking numbers, right? Okay, great. That gives product an area to go explore. It's like, hey, wow, we noticed a 200% increase in tracking number tickets this past month. Let's go dive into the data and see what's going on. Right? For support teams, it's critical that you give data in aggregate and not just the individual feedback, one-to-one, right? That's not to say an individual ticket may not rise a big feature request or something like that, but it's to say that just giving product teams all of your tickets doesn't really help, right? And support teams, sales teams, and others can all go through this process, right? It doesn't just mean that customer success might be the only people submitting a product request that has qualifying data. And frankly, influencing through data can be a team sport. If there's a feature request that both customer success and people on sales both feel is very important, they should aggregate their data together. The revenue impact can be retention, it can be expansion, it can be new sales. Bring all that together in one request to have a better influence of it, right? And that's where that single slide, it can be a Google Doc, wherever, you can do it right in the tool that you're using to aggregate this data and to build that pipeline, right? It could be in Monday, it could be in Jira. I've done it in spreadsheets and it works just fine. But having the clear criteria and kind of that single pane of glass into the request is critically important, right? So if you have one feature request, it's great to have your team sort of go out to the rest of the team and say, hey, has anybody else had this feature request? And if they have, aggregate that together into that single slide. So now you have this one feature request that is influenced by customer success, sales, and potentially other teams. So let's talk about some tactical tools to implement, right? One, you got to have the whole process documented, right? So now you're gone from just scattershot feedback to product. You've gone to, hey, we have a clear product opportunity that we're going to run through a pipeline, right? In order for teams to understand, especially if you're scaling and growing and you have new team members joining who are like, hey, where do I put this feedback? It's got to be documented. 1 page, 2 pages max. Try to keep it simple, right? The more simple it is, the better people will follow it. You need to have a product review board. And what this board does is review all of the incoming requests, and those requests can be scored. It doesn't mean they're reviewed in the order which they come in. They are reviewed in order of impact. And one way to really make sure that your teams feel like they're getting value out of this is help give them control over that impact, right? I have been in product review boards where one team member thought that they did have a high impact feature, but upon review of some of the other feature requests actually said, yes, this is valuable, but actually I think this is going to be even more valuable. So I want to add more weight to this one and bump that up in the review. The review gives everybody a clear cadence on when they get to a, frankly, yes or no, is a feature going to be put into contention or potentially even in the roadmap? It gives people a chance to get back to their customers and close that loop and say, hey, this is great. I'm going to take this to our product review board. It's happening in 2 weeks, and then I will report back to you the outcome after that review board. It allows you, again, to close the loop internally and externally. And as part of the tools, again, you have to have the clear factors, right? And again, you can evolve this over time, right? The first time you do this, you're not going to get it right, right? You're going to get it right. Let me requalify that. You're not going to get it 100% right. And that's okay, because I'll go ahead and implement this at another company, and it's not going to be 100% right. Could be 80, right? We're 80% better than we were before. Have clear determination factors. Revenue impact, how many customers. Look at the RICE framework, I think is a great way. RICE product framework talks about impact, right? You can actually have a scale of impact so that, say you have 2 features, they each could affect 10 million in revenue, and they each affect 100 customers. The deciding factor might be, but this feature actually has a broader impact across the product, right? That helps you not just look at it through just numbers, right? You do need some qualifying aspect to it. So you're going to have, again, clearly documented process. You're going to have a product review board. And that review board, again, doesn't just have to be the product team. It could actually be representatives from success or sales, people that have trust within the org to make the right decisions in view of your customer and driving the most business value that you can. And you're going to have a clear sort of like opportunity template of like how you intake that feedback. This should be opened up for everybody, right? Support, success, sales, really anybody, marketing, anybody who's getting feedback or anybody who feels like they've got an idea that should be heard throughout the company. And also a last good tip is, as leaders, right, there will always be that strategic roadmap, right? There will always be research and other avenues that lead to what is in a product roadmap, right? You form this company for a reason, right? So these things are not the sole building blocks of that. However, if you want to really influence and show an example, and as a leader in a company, you have some feedback, right? Maybe it's not ultimately like a strategic level feedback that should influence quarterly planning. Run it through the same process. Show the team how it's done and show that, hey, this is the funnel for everybody to use. C-suite, VPs, directors, individual contributors, anybody, right? It's important you do that as leaders. So my name is Mark Gray again. I'm founder of Day One Success. You can find me, Mark, at Day One Success. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've got a Calendly link on my website. Happy to chat anytime. Thank you again for watching.